welcome, everybody, to yet another episode of Life of Pisces. Pisces and Pisces. You can spell it many, many different ways. Your host is me, Christine Marguerite of Love Evolve Energy. And as most of you know, I'm a big, fat energy geek and a meditation person, and a lot of other things. But today I'm doing another interview with a beloved crony partner in the spirit of mine, one of my most delightful friends, Julia Wesley of Divine Realignment. She does Akashic reading and goes into the depth of your soul and spirit, but I'm going to bring her up here and she can tell you a little bit more about what she offers the planet.
Hello.
Julia, hello,
Hi.
welcome.
Thank
Tell us
you.
a little bit about what you offer these days. What's going on?
What I offer these days. So, I work in the Akashic Records and I help you get in touch with who you are as a soul. So, I do what are called soul blueprint alignments. I get into your record and we get down to the point of your origination, how you plan to express in this lifetime. And I also do Akashic Records healings and readings, which are a little different, but I mainly work in the Akash when I work with clients.
Yes,
Yeah.
and if you have never been with Julia in one of her one-on-one sessions, I highly, highly recommend it. It
Oh,
totally
thank
changed my
you.
life. I love your work, Julia.
Thank you.
Love
Thank
it.
you. I love yours.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So, I noticed that you did not mention mediumship.
I did not mention mediumship. I
And
studied under an
yet,
evidential medium when I
you
first got into
did.
this. Yes, I did. And it's funny because I, the medium, being a medium, very much wanted me to do mediumship. And what I kept picking up on were these things that my guides called soul blueprints. And I was like, can I just do this instead of picking up on someone's aunt? And she's like, okay, fine, you know? And so
I
then
love
that's
that.
how this started. But it's like you use mediumship in
Sure.
these things, right? But it's just, I've never, well, I guess I should. In spirits who have crossed over, it's much
Yes.
harder for me to I feel like I'm bugging them, but I have a much easier time picking up on spirits who have not crossed over and who other little things.
You're
So
so
I don't.
polite.
Yeah,
Your
I
decorum,
know,
your
right?
spiritual
Yeah.
decorum.
If
Yes.
someone's acting as a guide, I can pick up on them, but if you just want
Yeah.
me to knock on your Aunt Pam's door and she's doing her own thing, I'm like, yeah,
Yeah. Kind of
someone else can
intrusive.
do that for you. They'll be very good at it, but not me, you know?
So do you find in your when you're doing any kind of reading, and do you still do gallery style readings for people? Is that still part of what you offer?
Not so much anymore, but I used to. They were fun, but I just, yeah, just
Yeah,
moved
for
on.
sure. So when you're doing the one-on-ones, do you find that mediumship style things arise anyway on occasion?
On occasion, they do, particularly if it has
Yeah.
something to do with someone's soul path. If they are a
Ah,
medium, or if like a sort of pushed them into this kind of a thing. Sometimes what will happen is that person will pop up, or some sort of being or entity that they work with comes forward. So maybe it's an extraterrestrial, a galactic energy, or maybe it's an
yes,
angelic energy or something like that. That will pop up. And that's mediumship as well, but it's weird
for sure.
mediumship, you know?
Yes, I
Yeah.
think you and I both define mediumship similarly.
Yeah.
It's a communication with a consciousness that's not incarnate on the planet at this
Yes.
time. Yeah,
Exactly. We agree.
which hugely we agree about so much, everybody. So much. If you've seen me on Julia's podcast,
Oh, such a good
we riff, we go. So we're going to do that again today because why I'm bringing this up here, everybody, and Julia already knows. She and I share so many different ideas and grievances. One thing we share is an identity as a reluctant medium. We both
Mhm.
are we both have this reluctance to our capacity to be very strong mediums, but there's like a hard no. There's a hard
Mhm.
thanks, no thanks.
Yeah.
And I know that you have mentioned some of this has been arising for you of late. Could you kind of unpack that for us a little bit?
Yeah. So it's a little
Yeah.
I have to go back a little bit. So I
Yeah,
moved,
go back. Yeah.
and I had to move in with my parents until the apartment I was moving into became available and ready. So that's a lot of change. That's a lot of unrooting and then rooting and then unrooting and rooting again. And where my parents live is oddly active. There's a lot of fae activity. They live very close to a very old cemetery, so there's a lot of old dead people. The land is odd. It's oddly charged, and my parents, their address is 111. And
Ah,
yeah, right. And
okay.
so I've come and I visit before. Things have been a little strange, but I've never been here long enough for it to get like really weird. And so I've been here for a couple months. Um, and
Okay.
yeah, and it was so I was very aware of a fae presence in the area, very
Uh-huh.
strong. And it started with being hyper aware of them because I've never really worked with that energy before. And then
Oh,
from there,
interesting.
yeah, it just sort of snowballed into a whole bunch of dead people. So many dead people.
Okay, take it back, take it back. So the
Yeah,
Fae,
the
so the
Fae.
Fae. Okay.
So the Fae are like very connected to this land in particular for some reason. It's sort of where my parents are. It's this little place where dimensions are touching. So the dimension that the Fae are in
Okay.
and the dimension of this place, they sort of connect here in some way. They touch in many
Right.
places, you know.
So that's
Um,
what you're talking about this when you said the vibration of the land, something about the
yeah, yeah.
place
The
because
land is
it's
oddly
this
charged. Yes.
okay.
And so where my parents live now, it used to be a bunch of like orchards and farmland. And to build this place, they cut down a whole bunch of trees. And
Okay.
they are mad as hell that they cut down the trees because they are
Okay.
incredibly concerned about like conservation and trees and bees in particular. So it pissed
Okay.
off the bees. And so the fae, because they knew that I could
So
see
hold on.
that. Oh,
Okay, got it.
yeah,
Yeah, questions, questions.
go.
So if it's if I'm taking it apart too much, just let me know. Uh, so your parents cut down the trees,
No,
or the house? When was the house built?
they were built, gosh, maybe a decade ago. It couldn't have
Okay,
been too long ago. Yeah.
okay. So fairly recently, it was still an orchard or a
Yes.
field.
Mhm.
Okay, all
Yeah.
right. So that energy isn't like old anger. It's still pretty fresh.
Oh, it's still fresh.
Agitation.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, it is.
It is.
And so is the energy on the so does that contribute to the funkaliciousness of the land energy? That because when you talk
Mhm.
about it, it doesn't sound like the veil is thin just or there's a portal or there's a vortex. And maybe it's all three of those, but it sounds like there's a little agitation adding to that.
Yeah, exactly. I think you
Okay.
nailed it. So the way I understand it is the Fae stirred the pot with the it's like this perfect storm where my parents live. There's also a
Ah,
cemetery like that touches the property, right?
okay,
And
yeah.
it's very old, and only every once in a while will someone more recent be buried there. And they have somehow, because they're so angry and they're so attached to the land, they have agitated the energy in this
Yes,
area.
that's
And
how it
then
works.
also
Yeah.
there's a river behind my parents' place. And so the
Okay.
river, it has been covered over in certain spots. And so instead of it sort of acting as sort of a healing kind of a place, it's gotten somewhat stagnant. So not only
Okay.
have the dead been agitated and activated, they also are sort of stuck here because they can't really cross the river. And
Okay.
this is perfect, right? This is exactly where my parents live. You've got dead people on one side, the Fae right here, and nothing can cross this river that's right behind them. And on top of
Okay.
that, everyone knows I can
Yes.
see them now. And so
Oh,
I just keep
okay.
getting,
So go
yeah,
back, go back. So
okay.
you land
Hmm.
and it's kind of good. You're seeing your parents and it's happy, happy, and you're feeling a little rumbles, the rumbles, and you're like, huh, what's going on? Give us blow by blow.
So, blow by blow, maybe starts about 2 years earlier, where I'm studying with
Okay.
this evidential medium,
Okay. Yeah.
and, like, I'm okay with clairvoyant mediumship, like, where it's, like, sort of in your imagination.
Yep.
That's okay. Seeing these things with my eyes, not okay, right?
Not
Gross,
okay.
yucky,
There's
don't
a
wanna have it.
line.
Yeah. No,
Amen.
thank you.
There's a
Yeah.
line. Yes.
So this has been a thing for me, and I've probably talked about this before. I know I've talked about this with friends, and it's probably on the podcast where I'm like, I don't want it. I don't want to
Yeah.
see it. Creeps me out. And I do this thing. I do this for a
Amen.
living. And
I'm with
so,
you on that, sister.
yeah,
Like, I the and maybe towards the end, we'll unpack why we're so averse to this particular thing,
yeah.
but I wanna keep going with the play by play, blow by blow.
Yeah, so it first started with one of the very first times that I had visited my parents. I sort of woke up with this imagery and the knowing that there was a dead woman from the cemetery who kept trying to wake up my mom, desperately trying to wake up my mother, who can't hear her, but she's completely ignoring me, who actually knows she's there. And so I was like, oh, that's weird. I've never, whatever, I'll ignore that because I don't want to address it. Right. And
Right.
then fast forward to now, where I'm
Okay.
living here, right, for at least a
Yes.
couple months until I move on. And it just sort of comes with this awareness that I'm in bed and I just know that I am surrounded by dead people. I just
Okay.
know it, right?
Just
Yeah.
and that's just the claircog, the clair empathic. You
Sentience.
just
Yeah.
know it. So
I
that's
know they're
stage
there.
1.
Yes. Even my
Stage
dog
1.
knows that they are there, right? Like we're
Okay.
all aware of this. And I'm just sort of like, I'm sleeping with the light on because I can't, like it's like I'm 5 again. And it's that whole it probably stems back to childhood of why I don't want to see dead people, right? And so it's like I've regressed and I'm like, oh my God, this is terrible. What am I going to do? Blah, blah, blah. And I start working with guides and who are like, okay, we'll hold them off for now, but eventually you're going to have to figure out how to deal with this.
Okay.
Yeah. And so from there, because I kept being like, no, thank you. No, 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 no. And I kept pushing it off. It's almost as if maybe a week or two goes by. And because I've built up like a dam against this immense pressure, really this service that I'm capable of doing, but really have been
Yes.
avoiding,
Yeah.
I start physically seeing things. And it starts with like shadows, you know,
Yeah.
and then it's just a lot, right? Like it
Yeah.
just keeps coming and I just keep being like extra aware of things. And then I remember literally one time I saw a little gremlin thing sort of peek around the corner at me. And that was when I was
Uh-huh.
like, I'm done. I can't handle this. I can't do this. I checking in somewhere. I can't, my brain
Oh,
cannot, yeah.
girl.
And so I'm sort of, I work with a mentor who she's incredible, or she's a shamanic practitioner. She's been doing this for like 20 plus years. And so I got in touch with her and I'm like, I'm losing my mind. You have to help me. What can I do? And here's the thing and this is why I think it's so important. I think you probably agree with me, like as a practitioner, to be continuously learning and studying, right? It's sort of
Oh,
like being a teacher. You have to
yes.
keep going and you have to
Yes.
keep, yeah. And
Yeah.
so she has been working with me for years now. And she's sort of like, this is a thing, that you can cross souls on, and this is just part of your service. And I really haven't wanted it to be because I found it so creepy. And
Yeah.
she was just like, you're stepping into this power and you need to, essentially, it was like, buck up, like here it is. You have to deal with it. And that was how that happened. Now it turns out that I don't only see creepy things. I can also see really lovely things. But because I was so scared and because I was so freaked out, that I was really only focusing on like the creepy shit, like the
Of
gremlins,
course, that was your
you know.
lens, and so
Yes.
that's what was drawn to and resonating with your lens,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So that's that. And so what I started doing was I was like, okay, I will cross you over once a week. Every Sunday, we're going to do a ceremony where I'll open the portal. I am not the light you're looking for, but I'll show you what you're looking for. And then, we can cross on. We can deal with this. You can let me sleep. That was what I had to do when I actually was in meditation one day, and the guides that I had set up to sort of corral and push aside these people to let me sleep. They were like, "We need to
Yeah.
talk. Like, you actually have to start taking care of them. Like,
Okay.
you can't." And
Yes.
so I was like, "Okay, fine." And yeah, it's just been this whole thing. And what's funny about this though is, and as you do this work, you learn that it's continuously evolving. You
Yes.
continuously grow, right? And so I had been doing this thing where I'm crossing people over weekly, and now it's changing yet again. I still
Right.
haven't figured out what it is yet. So I do cross people over. That has settled down a bit because a lot of what I do is also connected to the land. And I have
Yes.
stopped pulling just random dead people to me. You know, because I that's just what you do, right? When you're
Yes.
waking up and you're like, what is this thing? How do I use it? And you just, and people are like, you rang, and I'm like, did I have no idea. And so it's now it's something different where I'm sort of dealing with more like discernment with, is this an energy that I want to be dealing with? Is this an energy that needs something from me? Is this sort of a nuisance energy, and how do I deal with it, and how do I move it on? How do I tell it to just get out of here, essentially? um, it's
Yes.
really been, I've been avoiding this type of mediumship for a really long time, but it's sort of, when you start fully stepping into what you can do and what you're here to do, and I talk about this in a soul blueprint, right? You
Yeah.
expand, like your blueprint grows in it, and this is just part of it, you know? But it
Yes.
doesn't mean that I have to like it.
It does not. And you
No.
can be as reluctant as you
Yeah.
damn well please. Yep.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I know you Capricorns,
Oh, yeah.
you
Don't
can
tell me what
put
to do.
up a fight.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Exactly.
love that.
So, what's your story been with mediumship?
So, well, I have a few more questions
Oh,
before I
okay.
get into that. I'm just, well, one thing I will mention is
Hmm.
what the person who helped me was a shaman. And
Yeah.
I find that really interesting
That's where
that
the good
that's
stuff's at.
like, so let's talk about that in a
Yeah.
minute.
Hmm.
Well, so when there was the shift from random calls from former human incarnates who wanted to shift into the light,
Hmm.
or had a desire to in some way, who needed that ushering through. Is that when the Fae and the Gremlins became more present, or was it interweaved throughout? What was the flavor of that? And I imagine that's what's happening now as we speak.
Hmm. Yeah. So
Okay.
it was the Fae first. The Fae are so interesting to me because at first they scared me when I first encountered them on one of my visits to see my parents. They are wild. They're like what humans would be if we were just a little bit more animalistic, right?
Yeah.
And when I first, my my clairvoyance is just sort of like blown wide open while I was here, and I was dreaming, and it was a vivid dream. It was like I wasn't really asleep, and this Fae is in the neighborhood, and I'm, for some reason, I'm in the neighborhood in my dream, and he jumps out at me, and it freaks me out enough that I sort of jolt awake. But it took me until I went back to my house until I was finally like okay enough to deal with it. And that's when I figured out that, oh, it's the discernment thing. Like, oh, that was just what that was. They just wanted my
Yeah.
help and attention, and that's just how they
Yes.
communicate, right? So it was the
Yeah.
Fae first. And
And their
then,
energy, their emotion, because they happen to
oh,
have
yeah,
emotions like humans. And
yeah,
so that's that's so jarring.
yeah. And
That's
they're
so
not afraid
jarring.
of their emotions, right? Like
No.
they're
Yeah.
fully in them. It's
Yeah.
great. Yeah.
Whatever it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so like when you are human and you're not like in your body and you haven't claimed your emotions and things like that, you're like, this is a demon. But it's not. It's just, if you were totally open to your emotions and you didn't apologize for them, here's what you
Yeah.
could be. Yeah.
My opinion, my experience with the Fey realm is there's no there's fair a sense of fairness, but
Hmm.
not malice. Like I don't sense cruelty or malice, and unless you're really discerning between frustration and anger
Hmm.
and intentional, like we want to harm or hurt, like it
Yeah.
doesn't, for me it never felt like that. Like there's so much kindness there, but
Yeah.
I've never come across an angry Fae. So
Yeah. It was
grieving
like a
Fae.
a
But
righteous justice that this person was like, or this fae was
yes,
full of. And it was
yeah.
like, listen, I know you can see me. I know you can
And
hear me.
so yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so it was very much like justice for the earth, right? Because what happens here also affects other dimensions and places. And so they're like, cut this out. Like, this is not just hurting you, it's hurting us. And so you have to, and I was like, okay, I can do that. I just didn't, you just, until you are willing to engage and use that discernment, like you don't understand what's going on. And so you fall back onto your like knee jerk, unconscious responses, you
Totally.
know?
And I do. And, the only way to really learn that is by doing it. You have to I
Yeah,
don't think a book can really prepare you.
I agree. I agree.
You have to
It's really by feel. Someone could have told
wicked.
me what that's like, but it's not the same.
It's not the same. It's
Yeah.
not the same. There's an overwhelming profundity reality to it that is
Yes.
that in itself is jarring.
Yes. It
Never
is.
mind whatever energy is coming through, right, to
Exactly. Oh,
communicate.
exactly. It changes, like, literally your mind bends and stretches, and how you hold the energy of this other entity, like, in your body. What does it feel like? Like, I can
Yeah.
tell you all about it, right? But until you experience it, you
It's
know,
like I'm
how are
yeah,
you going to handle it? I didn't handle it well. I didn't handle it with grace. I freaked out, you
girl.
know? Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So once you started moving and transitioning into your new apartment, that made you feel more grounded in your humanness in a way? Or
Yeah, yeah. So that's actually been a theme in this past couple of weeks for me. There's been so much going on. And it's
girl.
really sort of switched to now like galactic energies. I'm really running
Okay.
the gamut. There's so much going on, you know. And
Yeah.
it's been really interesting where all of these things that, because I wasn't in my power, and I'm still exploring this, because I thought I was in my body, but I am not in my body. Like
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
deeper, it keeps getting deeper. And the more I'm willing to sink into it, the more I become conscious of, the more I am aware of, like, oh, I didn't realize that was just keeping a tabs on me. I don't think I want that. So let's deal with that, you know?
Yes.
And those things could be considered scary and demonic or disempowering if you're not in your power, right? If you're not
Right.
in your body, really.
So
Coming to this point was very much kicking and screaming. And that's just my process. And I have to own that process, right? Because that's the anger, the frustration, the freak out, really, is
yeah.
how I, in my process, own my power, right? Because this is
Okay.
where I'm at in this moment right now. And I'm
And
just
I'm
going
gonna
to be here.
feel it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I will do this thing, and I will do it maybe a little frustrated and maybe a little angry. And I'm going to use that as a shield a little bit to
Yeah.
make me feel safe. And
Yep.
so that's just part of step one, right? And then
Okay.
as
Yeah.
I get used to the situation, as I engage, so I'll use this example. I just did so I do crossings and I do land clearings, and sometimes there are entities attached to a place or a person, and I'll deal with that. And I had someone reach out to me and say, "Hey, I have someone who thinks that there's a spirit in their house. They want to know if they can tell it to leave, but I was wondering if you could help them cross over." And so I was like, okay, why not? I'll try it. I've never done that sort of remotely, but let's see what happens. It actually was a galactic being that was pretending to be a ghost because they thought it was funny.
Oh,
And I think that if I hadn't gone through this whole process of trial by fire, of being freaked out, of being scared, of being angry, of being frustrated, that being confronted with that sort of weirdness would have really scared me. And
yeah.
I wouldn't have trusted that that's what that was. I wouldn't have felt as if I could deal with that because, I mean, it's alien, right? It feels very weird and it feels very different. And I
Yeah.
know how to deal with dead people. You
Yeah.
open, but what do I
Yeah.
tell? An alien is not dead.
Right.
That happened. And then it was really with the dead people. I'm sorry, the souls that have not crossed on yet. That
You can shorthand it with
yeah.
dead people if you want to.
It
That's
was
it's
with
not
them.
inaccurate.
It's not. It's maybe not
No,
delicate.
don't be
Yeah.
delicate. Dead
That's
people.
where I
Yeah.
really got angry because I'm like, "You were a human. You know how boundaries work. You know that you're not supposed to be in my bedroom. You know that you're not supposed to be crawling into bed or trying to or poking me, you know?" And so I'm like, "What is this? Like, have you lost all sense of decency and boundaries and composure?" And it's like, "Yes, they have because they're completely freaked out. They need help."
Yeah.
And,
They're in a heightened emotional state. If
yeah.
they're coming to you,
Mhm.
they're in a heightened emotional state.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it was me getting angry at them in the situation to where I finally was like, "What do you want? What?"
Yeah.
You know?
Okay.
And it's the anger, that helped me
Yeah.
process it and get through it. And
Oh,
the dead people thing has been an issue really throughout my entire life, especially when I first
yes.
started opening up again, and I
Yeah.
just became hyper aware of dead people everywhere, 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 everywhere.
Yes.
And I was just like, I had this moment where I sort of shut the clairvoyance back down. I was like, I can't handle this. I can't do this.
Amen, sister. I'm
Yeah.
right with you. Yeah.
And so then my guides were like, I remember hearing this very clearly in my head. It was odd. They're like, you're not giving yourself enough credit. And I was
Mm.
like, well, try giving me credit later because I don't want it right now. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. And so they introduced me to this concept of you don't have to engage with them if you don't want to. And so I was
Yes.
like, I don't want to. But, you progress and you go along in this and you do the work, right? The spiritual commitment and dedication.
Yes.
And you start opening up and being willing to allow these things that are part of your work but that you have been avoiding. And so that's where I'm at
Yes.
right now. I don't know where it ends up, but I'm following the path.
So are your boundaries a little bit less angry these days then?
They are a little bit less angry, but they're still like, I'm not afraid of it. I'm not afraid to be angry because sometimes you're just confronted with things where you're like, how is this even a thing?
Yes.
Like, how is like, who could have ever imagined that this would be? And so sometimes the anger gives me oddly enough levity to deal with the situation where I just throw my hands up. I'm like, okay, fine. This is a thing. Let's deal with it.
Yeah,
And I think anger is a really good tool for boundaries, for momentum, for change, you know?
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a catalyst.
Yes. Yeah. You are just as powerful as any dead person. Your spirit as well,
Just as, if not more so, because
Exactly.
you're
Yeah.
in a body.
Yes. So here, at least in the physical, you win. You win.
You win.
You get to tell them
There's
what
no
to do.
contest.
You get to
Yeah.
make them go away.
Yes.
Absolutely. And
Oh.
so when you do this sort of a thing, if you're even just
Yeah.
curious about it, you have to be willing to, I guess, confront yourself a little bit and to get into those things that are uncomfortable. Sometimes that means mediumship. I found that out the hard way in this past 2 months. It's the thing where if I'm committed to this work, and I am, sometimes I have to do that. Why am I so scared of it? What am I avoiding? What's the point? Why am I trying to hide from myself?
Did you find that you were trying to avoid?
I
Were you
totally was.
hiding? What were you
Yeah.
trying to avoid?
Oh man, it's this whole thing. It stems back from when I was a kid, and
Yeah.
I was raised Catholic. I don't identify as Catholic anymore, but the whole thing about women not being spiritual leaders or spiritual authorities, and how it was only men, and in particular priests, who could have any sort of relationship with God. And I, as a child, knew I was weird and different, and I would go to church and I'd be like, "You guys are full of shit. Like, what are you talking about?" And, like, I don't think I would have called them by the terminology that I would use now, as a soul, like a lost soul or something like that. But I had a deceased person come to me and put on this whole show. I'm like 5, and he wanted something from me, and I'm like, if you're not crossing, like, you can get out of here, essentially. And like, I would do that since I was a kid. And I was actually working with my mentor on this because I'm like, I feel like I'm half assing this. I feel like there's some
Ah,
part of myself in my work that I'm just avoiding and not touching and not being authentic about. And
okay.
it was this was part of it.
That's
You
what
know,
you were avoiding.
I was using it to not be fully in my power. And I'm still not. It's still a process and I'm still going to have
Oh,
to commit
for
myself
the
to
rest
it.
of our lives, girl.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
But this was a large part of it, and I was like, "Ugh, I'm letting the church win." Every time I do
Oh
this, I'm
my
letting those factors
gosh.
win. Yeah,
By
it's a
not
big thing.
stepping ah,
Yeah,
wow, so that is a loaded bit of conditioning.
so much.
Oh my
Absolutely.
goodness.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, absolutely. What is it for you? Why do you not enjoy mediumship?
It has to do with weakness
Mm,
and not wanting to feel myself weak or
mhm.
support weakness in others. It's that is harsh, man, but that is the god awful truth. That's my authentic truth around that.
Yeah.
And just because I can do it doesn't mean that it's helpful. And
Mm,
if it's not helpful, I'm not gonna do it.
okay.
It just seems like entertainment.
Mm,
So I
yeah,
have a whole bunch of judgments, and I have friends who are strong mediums, and they are firm believers in the therapeutic benefit of mediumship connection between somebody and somebody else who has passed over. They do the traditional understanding of mediumship.
yeah. Mhm,
And when I was a little girl, it was really uncomfortable. It was visual for me. It wasn't
mm,
clairvoyant. It was seeing things and nobody else saw them.
yeah,
And so it's confusing. And then when you hear stuff at night, not because but you actually hear stuff
mhm.
and drawers opening and
Oh,
people
no.
actually on the stairs, somebody's like, it's
Scary.
scary.
Yeah.
And so eventually got bred out of me and would happen on occasion, just on occasion,
Mhm.
until not very long ago, 5, 6, 7 years ago, maybe it started happening with more frequency. I had judgments around
Yeah.
its therapeutic benefit.
Mm, mhm.
And that's all. It kind of reminds me of like when I was doing a lot of performing and I was very good actor, great actor, really good dancer, but I loved to dance. I wanted to dance.
Mhm.
Just because I could do the acting thing, the triple threat musical theater thing doesn't mean I wanted to do it.
Yeah.
Just because I could, right?
Yeah.
Like it
Mhm.
just wasn't a good fit.
Yeah.
And so I maybe have an idea about that with mediumship just because I can.
Mhm.
It's nice as a happenstance adjunct to whatever energy session,
Yeah.
as if it arises. That's cool. But I don't do the group crossovers anymore. But then again,
Mhm.
like it's not specific to where I am.
Mhm.
The group crossovers, I was working a lot with a shaman already, and she suggested, and I was telling her stuff that was happening, and she suggested I do this. So I did,
Yeah.
and it was really helpful,
Yeah.
actually. It made a difference, to my
Yeah.
chagrin in some ways,
Yeah.
because I want it to not be true, right? Like energy work can be true, but
Mhm.
ghosts can't.
Yes.
What? Christine, really? Really?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So
Yeah.
so that's my reluctance around it. And I tend to be I want to be different, and mediumship is such like a catch-all term on the one hand,
Everybody's
and
medium.
everyone's a medium. And there's
Yeah.
mediums on TV and like
Uh-huh. Yeah. And then
and
also, there's a lot of mediumship looks this way, you know?
oh, ideas about.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. There's a lot of, if you're not Teresa Caputo, you're not a medium, you know? And it's just a
Yeah.
lot. And it, I mean, that's what's popular. That's what people see. And I think that it's
Yeah.
great that people are seeing it and minds are being opened and getting curious.
Yes.
But I do think, that if you step into this work, there are a lot of preconceived notions about what it can be and what it is and how people do it. And that, it makes it hard. It gets in the way because yours might look different, and it's still
Yeah.
mediumship.
Yes. Well,
Mhm.
at least we consider it mediumship.
I will take this to the streets. It is mediumship.
You go, girl, get on that soapbox and
Yes.
yell out your lungs. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, In my basic understanding, that's what it seems like, for sure.
Yeah.
Communicating with consciousness,
And in particular, like if you're sitting in session with a client and you're acting as the medium between their guides or your guides
right?
or their
Whatever needs to
consciousness.
happen there.
Yeah, and them that's mediumship.
It's kind of
That's
mediumship, right? I
it is.
just don't call it.
You're the
No.
medium. You're the in
Right.
between. Yeah,
If I put it out there as an offering, people start asking about their relatives,
exactly. Yeah.
and that's not how it works for me.
Yes. Yeah, so that's another reason why I don't advertise that I do that, because there's another thing with mediumship, right? You think that you want to talk with this person, but this person does not is not who you need to talk to.
No.
Actually, we're going to talk to this person.
Yeah.
And so sort of people sometimes think that they're like going to a restaurant and I'm going to order it this way and it's going to come out this way and it's like, "Oh, that's not how." So, I mean,
No.
you could get lucky. That could be the person you need to talk to.
Sometimes.
But
Well,
sometimes it's not.
I've found that if they request somebody, that person, that former person, will
Mhm.
hover somewhere.
Yeah.
They may not be at the front of the line,
Yeah.
because I do create a line. I get very organized because it's efficient, right? Who
Yes.
has time, right?
Yeah.
Order of importance. And that person may not be willing. That person may be in their own triage unit in the sky or some whatever you want to
Mhm.
call it, and it's just not available.
Yeah.
Not available.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's also expectations, right? I have a hard time with that. And it's
Meeting people's
particularly yeah,
expectations.
when it comes to mediumship, right? Because it's so prevalent and so out there, people have this idea of what it's supposed to be and what it can be. And this is what
Yeah.
I want out of it. And I'm like, I'm not Teresa Caputo. I can't
Mm-mm.
guarantee this is going to be your experience. I can guarantee that you'll get the session that you need. I can't guarantee that it'll be the session that you want.
Want.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think that my makeup, right? I have this reluctance to reach out to people who are on the other side who have like done their time and
Yeah,
they're
you've
just doing
said
their
that,
thing.
and you
Yeah.
don't wanna bother them.
There's just not I just don't have this urge within me because I have this inherent knowing and understanding that they're okay. Like they're fine. So I have a
Yeah.
hard time, and this is just me, and I understand that mediumship is a very healing and therapeutic service. And I've seen it work wonders on people. But I just don't have it in me to like because I'm like, yeah, they're fine. They're cool. They're great. They love you. You love them. Everyone knows. It's cool. And so for me, my heart goes out most to the souls that are still stuck here and have not
Yes.
found it within themselves to move on, you
Which is
know?
interesting because they don't pay you money.
They sure don't.
So to put that on
Yeah.
your, as
Uh-huh.
like a thing, so it's just this gratuity that we offer the planet. I
Yeah.
mean, when it's appropriate, when it's timely.
Yeah, exactly. And then I also enjoy so I'm a fan. Have you ever heard of the Dead Files?
Yeah.
I'm enamored with that show. I think it's
Ooh,
fascinating
really?
The way Amy Allen does it. I'm like, that is so interesting.
Mm.
But she leaves at the end and she doesn't, like, fix the problem, and then
I
and I'm
know.
like, "Maybe that's not her thing," but me personally, like, how can you leave?
I
You
don't
didn't
know.
do
That's
it.
what bugs me about all of those let's
Yes.
contact the ghost shows.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
not they're interested in the entertainment value. They're
Yeah.
not interested in the evolution, growth, and
Yeah.
holing and healing of anything.
Yeah. I
Or they
think
would do
oh,
something.
absolutely. I think you're right. I think in the case of the Dead Files that there's at least a goodwill, like they want to do
Mm,
this in good faith and help this person. But I think when you're talking about Ghost Adventures and Zach Baggins, that guy is just whatever.
gross.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally gross. But I think
I
that was another like clue for me, right? That's what bugs me about this, that you didn't fix this, that's what I that's where my heart is, right? Like, I want
Yes.
to heal that land. I want to help this poor family that feels like they're being attacked. I want to
Yes.
move this soul on. Like, you can't be here, buddy. Like, you gotta go.
So then, like, house clearing's the appropriate,
Yeah,
if you want to put that on your
that could
offerings.
be. Yeah, that could be. I don't know if I want to make it because it's so, as long as I guess the client sees the results, but then that's all that really matters. But at the same time, it's still one of those things that maybe in the future I'll feel confident enough to do that. But because it's
All
still
right.
kind of new, I still feel like I'm trying to get comfortable with it, you know?
Okay. I do.
Yeah.
All right. We'll start our own company, you and I,
Oh my gosh.
and it'll be the house cleaners.
That'd be cute.
And
Yeah.
that's all we'll do.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah.
When we were offline and before we started the show here, I was talking about this book, um, something, the life of or the adventures of
The reluctant Messiah,
the
right?
reluctant Messiah.
Yeah.
It's the same guy who wrote Jonathan Livingston Seagull, but it's the same premise. He was born the Messiah, and, refused it, fought tooth and nail against it his entire life until a series of events happens and he learns to accept who he is.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, right?
yep.
Yeah.
I mean, aren't we
The
all in some
reluctant
ways, right?
medium. Yeah.
Right? The
Mhm.
reluctant medium.
Yeah. It's us. You hear that stinking metaphor about the pulling back the arrow just creates resistance and it goes farther and quicker when it's finally released. And it's like, I guess that's what reluctance does?
Um, yes, it does. I would say it definitely does that.
Yeah.
Ooh, it's called by Richard Bach.
Richard Bach.
Illusions, The Adventures of a Reluctant Messiah. Is there anything that you is coming to heart or mind that you'd like to share before we wrap up?
Yeah. I guess I would just say, like, the spiritual path is a messy one. And don't
Mm.
be afraid to get ugly. You know,
Mm.
that's part of being human. That's part of the experience. Don't be afraid to be a little scaredy cat every once in a while. And then don't be
Yeah.
afraid to get angry. Like, feel your damn feelings. Be
Feel your
in them.
feelings.
Revel in your feelings because that's commitment to this path, right?
It is to
Yeah.
your human livingness,
Yes.
the actual beingness of human. Because
Yeah.
what if that's part of why you came here? What if
Right.
that's
It
part
is.
of why I came here? I came here to experience deep depressions and the relief and release after. That's part of what I came to experience,
Hmm.
right? Or anger or frustration
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
you you know,
It's
when
like
else
the
are you gonna get to do
liberation
that?
of those
Yeah,
feelings.
of those feelings, just feel them.
Yeah, absolutely.
God, my
And
light
then
just went out. Wait.
and then, like, it's part of the whole thing, and be afraid of that ghost, and be angry at that angel,
Yes.
and it be the whole damn thing, and you're
Be
gonna
the
get through
whole
it.
human. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
You may not otherwise.
yep.
Not to scare you, but, like, be all of it
Be
and then
all of
see what
it.
happens.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly, and don't, please, for the love of God, do not expect your mediumship or your path or your consciousness work to look pretty because it's gonna be ugly. I promise
Uh,
you.
it's
And it's gonna
gonna.
be beautiful and it's gonna be ugly, and you're
Yeah,
gonna love it and you're gonna hate it, and that's the whole point.
that's the point.
It's you being human, man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
man.
I always love talking to you.
I love talking to you too. All right, everybody, we are going to the light just went back on. Apparently there's a light in my room that just goes on and off when I slap things really hard, but there has to be a lot of emotionality
You're
behind it.
electric, Christine.
Girl, that's my niece actually. She's a slider. You
Really?
notice? Yeah, wicked. She
Wow.
blows through like she doesn't wear watches anymore because she can't. She just blows through electronics. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. It's so
Thank you for
fun.
hanging out and chatting about the true, the good, the beautiful, the ugly,
Yes,
and the reluctance of mediumship.
it is the reluctance, isn't it? My pleasure. Thank
Totes.
you for asking about it and talking about it and making it normal to
Yeah,
be in your
weird.
feelings and messy and in the
Yes.
depths of it, like, it's important.
Yeah,
It's the work. It's the
it's the
fun.
work. It's the work and it's the fun.
Mhm.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Julia, if people want to connect with you, where can they find you?
If after this ringing endorsement of my work that I have given.
So,
Yeah.
girl, you don't even know. You are you are lighting some people on fire right now. So, where can
Well,
these fire-filled pants
yeah,
people
if
find
you're
you?
on fire and you wanna learn more about my work and what I do, you can find me at divinerealignment.com. I'm on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook by that name.
Beautiful.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Julia. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. And so much love and blessings to you. And just keep going, everybody. Just keep going. It's all it's all good. Sometimes it's gonna be okay, sometimes it's not. It's gonna be what it's gonna be. So much love on your journey and your path. Mwah. Catch you on the flip. Bye.
Bye.